Good. Okay, so back to this. Why and how he does it. Welcome, Henry.
Hello, I'm Terry Gregory. Welcome to Polk Salad, where today we will have a bounty of conversation with three very gracious women who happen to be fantastic artists and amazing community members. So stay tuned and we will be right back. Welcome back, and as promised, we have our first guest here, Erin Marr, and I'm thrilled to have Erin here in our studio, and you will see why in just a few minutes. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, glad to be here, Terry.
Yeah. I've
Thanks.
seen your photographs. The first time I saw your photography was a couple of years ago at a showing in Monmouth, and I think the pictures were taken in a foreign country, right?
A lot of them, probably.
Where
Yeah.
were they?
So a lot of the work, the show and crush that I had was, had a lot of the works from Germany, from Berlin, and probably some from, I'm trying to picture what was on the wall, probably a few from Oregon and Portland, too. There were some Portland shots in that, yeah.
And did you do anything to the photographs, color-wise? Or
No,
is that
I
just
tend-
natural light?
You know, yeah, I
Because
like...
some of it looked like it had been almost colorized, and I thought it can't be that good.
Did it? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I really prefer to rely on natural light. I come from having used film.
Oh, really?
And, and so that move into digital, where you can then manipulate, I don't like to rely on that.
And you still use digital.
I use digital, and I still do film as well.
Why?
I still like the quality I get. It's almost something I can't describe.
No,
It's
I've heard people say that.
Yeah, it's a textural quality. It's also a tone. You know, if you go into the color film, you're going to see different tones. But with my digital, I'll do a little bit of contrast where I can, kind of up or I'll do something with the exposure, but I don't tend to do anything with the color. I don't, do any of the saturate. People can do really wild things.
Yeah, it just looks beautiful. It
Oh,
looks
thanks.
incredible,
Yeah.
like gorgeous. So how did you come to be a photographer?
It's something that goes back to my childhood.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
I always love for our guests to be inspired by what's really in your, I believe what's really in your heart in childhood is really you.
Yeah.
And then we cover it all up with stuff.
Yeah,
So
and
most of my
finding-
guests will say, oh, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I mean, finding that again. I think that's really interesting, those layers. Because I had a Polaroid camera when I was about 8.
You mean the kind that shot out?
Yeah.
Love those things.
Love that.
It was like magic, right?
It was. Yeah, and I still love those. And it's the film, it's gotten hard to work with now. But yeah, had one of those. So I took pictures, and then as I got older, I always had a little camera that I would use. And in high school, I took a photography class and worked in the darkroom and loved doing that. And then just, kind of kept a camera with me. But off and on, did more or less with it. And then I always had art in my life.
How so?
My grandparents were both artists.
We're like
painters.
Painters.
Yeah. And my family just, I was thinking about it this morning. I think part of what was key for me is everyone I can think of in my family notices visual stuff.
Oh my.
You
so
know?
you had that in the back of your mind always.
Yeah, just that.
It was
seeing
sort of an
things.
input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing things. Oh, look at that. Look at that color. Look at that flower. Look at and architecture. Both my parents are interested in.
Because a lot of your photography has architecture,
It
doorways,
does.
and different sorts of architectural elements in it, which
Yeah.
I find is
and
just
I'm
so
drawn
beautiful.
to that. Yeah, and I went in college. I went into art history, and then went on to get a graduate degree in history of art and architecture. So I did a lot with architecture from that side of things.
Yes. Where was that?
In Pittsburgh, University
Is that
of
where you're
Pittsburgh.
from? Pittsburgh?
No, I'm from Los Angeles originally.
Are you really?
Yeah.
How'd you end up in Pittsburgh?
For graduate school.
Did you
Yeah,
go
I
to
went
school
there
in
for-
LA though?
I went to
Undergrad?
school, part of my undergrad was in LA, part of my one later year was in Santa Barbara, but 2 of my undergrad years were in Italy.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I was away.
Do you speak
Yeah.
Italian?
I do.
Oh, how wonderful. And then you went back to Pittsburgh.
And then I was in Pittsburgh, yeah, and did graduate research that also took me back to Italy and just took a lot of pictures of architecture.
Yeah.
And I think I'm drawn to that built environment, but how we interact with it. And architecture is an art form that impacts us all daily, whether we notice it or not. You know, the
Right.
space we're in, how we move through a space, how we walk down a street, and how the buildings are, and what shadows they cast, and what, I mean, it's all kind of,
Yep.
it's part of what we're all around.
That's
And
interesting.
So I find it interesting, and it's almost hard for me to articulate what makes me take a picture of a certain object or scene, or it's when the camera, you can kind of also zoom into one piece of something. You're walking down a street and you're seeing the whole range of, it's almost overstimulation. There's so much, a city street, for example. But to kind of hone in on one bit of that, sort of one part of the story, is interesting to me. I know some of my interior shots that I've done. For example, I've done a couple of cafes with chairs. Just that idea of one kind of moment, and being able to imagine, kind of put a story with that in your own mind. Whoever sees it will have their own.
So you're always
story.
looking, you're observing. So it's interesting to me because many people that I have on the show who are artists or writers or whatever seem to be somewhat introverted. So, but you don't strike me as an introvert. And so,
I hide it well.
do you really? Because I think I was reading something about, a famous photographer, and she said she was so much more comfortable looking at the world and not having the world look at her.
Yeah, interesting.
So, but
yeah, I am an introvert.
Are you
I
really?
mean, by that basic description of I need that time alone to recharge. I mean, that's where I draw my energy, and I write as well, so I relate to that. That kind of piece of. But yeah, I think definitely it's interesting when I take pictures of people, because I like being able to be separate from what's going on and get real genuine expressions and interactions, but be sort of that fly on the wall.
Yeah.
It's almost easier when I take pictures of people who don't know me, or at an event or something, where people, because they're not trying to talk to me, or they don't know, so I can be a little bit more in the background. And
do you take pictures at events?
I have, yeah. I've done that minimally. I've done family pictures because I do it in a certain style. There are a lot of people who do wonderful family pictures and do it certain ways, and people have certain expectations of family portraits and things. And I really love the more candid kind of
Photojournalism.
yeah,
sort of type of
photojournalism
stuff. Yeah.
type of take on it. Yeah.
So as that 8-year-old girl, were you? Where were you in your line of siblings?
Oldest.
You were the oldest,
Yeah.
and you were okay being not the center of attention, like being behind the camera.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever wasn't seeking that.
So that was comfortable
Like,
for you.
yeah.
Go, okay, I can just pay attention to what's going on out
Yeah.
here. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested too in when I'm interviewing people on the show. There's so many people in this community that have these vast experiences, and they end up in Monmouth. How'd you end up in Monmouth?
It's really, really wonderful. I love that about Monmouth.
I
and
do
still
too.
discovering after I've been here 11 years, and still meeting people who are doing things I had no idea.
Yeah,
It's inspiring.
Yeah, Monmouth and Independence has such a vast. Well, our community at large just has such a vast citizenry, if that's and experiences, and people who choose to just come here and be here.
Right, and how that overlaps and interacts. And we came here because of my husband's job at Western. Brought
Many
us here
people
all the way
do.
from Alabama. We were in Alabama.
Really? Why?
before
Is
that.
he from Alabama?
No, he was teaching there. So
At the University of Alabama?
at Sanford University
Oh,
for
yes,
a
of
visiting
course.
professorship, and we were in Birmingham, and we made the trek, our own Oregon Trail. We blazed, made it a nice long journey, and saw sights and visited friends and family, and came here and unpacked our bags, and we've been here ever since.
Was it hard to leave Alabama?
No, we went there knowing it would most likely be a year. It was a temporary position, so it was kind of, we had been in Pittsburgh. It was sort of that stopping off point, and we didn't know where we would be
Is he
next.
from Pittsburgh?
For a part of his, for his graduate, he was there for about 10 years, but it was more young adult time, because before that he lived in various places on the East Coast. So.
And so he's a professor here in the
History
History.
department, yeah.
So you both have that history in common.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met in graduate
What were you
school, so.
hoping to do with a history of art and architecture degree?
You know, That's an interesting question.
Or did you just go into it because I want to do it and I'm interested in it?
Yeah, that's how I approached my graduate degree, was without getting too fixed on what would happen after. I know I wanted to study more. I knew I wanted to study more. I wanted to still be engaged in it. I loved being a student. I loved college.
I did too.
And yeah, I mean, it was like there was so much
I'd
more.
I'd still be in college if
I
could.
would be too, exactly. And that was the harder part about graduate school, is having to get more focused. I wanted to keep taking a little bit of everything. But I got a teaching assistant position that, fortunately covered the cost, so it wasn't a question of, had it been a question of going into debt, which I know is such an issue now more than ever, it probably would have been a different set of considerations. But it was that feeling of, hey, if I can still be in school,
right?
I worked as a teaching assistant while I was in school that covered expenses, and so I did my master's that way, and I really felt like it was valuable in and of itself.
Yeah. Good.
Which
See,
was
I just
wonderful.
had someone sit in this chair a few shows ago to say, I wish that's what I would have done. I wish I hadn't considered, I have to make a living. Because what she found out was she could make a living doing what she loved. So anyway.
Yeah, you can't, you start to get in your head about what degree will get me what, and you lose the passion.
Right.
I think sometimes, or
Right.
you don't get in touch with, like what you're saying, what was really there all along that you really wanted to follow.
Right.
And it's hard.
Right.
I put aside my camera for a number of years, and it was finally like this. It was this feeling, this kind of empowering feeling of I want to do this. I did for a lot of years feel like I can't work as an artist. I can't do, who does, I
Right.
can't, other people can make that work.
Right.
I can't make that work.
Many people make it work, is what I discover. I own a bed and breakfast,
Right.
in town, and I am always amazed by the way people earn a living and how they do make it.
Yeah.
Somehow what they want to do becomes profitable.
Right.
It's amazing.
Right. And even if you can't make it profitable in the way that you want it to, I think for many people, if somehow they can still find that creative outlet
Yes.
in their lives.
Yes.
If they have a job that then, on their time off or, to really still follow that. Because
Or being a mom, because you have 2 kids,
I do.
right? And how old are
Yeah.
they?
They are 7 and almost 7. Olive is 6, and Henry just turned 9.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So you have a job.
Yes.
And full time.
Yes, and they have not been in school full time until this year. So it's
So how did you just sort of carve that photography into,
yeah.
that's a challenge, I think, for
It is.
parents, and especially usually for mothers
Yeah.
who tend to be the primary caregiver, not always, but how do I keep, because I would guess that being true to your creativity and the photography feeds you in a way that makes you better at what you're doing.
Yes, and that was something I had to really come to realize, that I needed that. I needed the photography, my writing, when I make space for that. I am a better person. I can be a better parent.
Right.
When I am making that time and honoring that.
And how'd you do that?
And it wasn't without without struggles. And like I said before, this year my kids were home. Olive was in kindergarten last year and was home half the day, and before that, it was a lot of the day and all of the day, and it was what I came to realize, and it was a real comfort to me, was that my photography was there. And that it would be there, or my writing, whatever that
must
creative.
have been a real stress reliever.
And
to think,
that was,
I got to get to it. I got to get to it. I
right.
got to get to it. No, it'll be there when I do
To know
get
it's
to it.
there, and
Yes.
to have felt
That's
like
brilliant.
I created this foundation, because I got back to it when Henry was a toddler, and I was kind of put things in place to be able to work a little bit more and create that space. But there were times I had to not, I couldn't get to it at all, and it just felt like it's okay, it's there, and this is what works about it, is that I can fit it in. It can recede when I need it to recede, and it can kind of come to the forefront.
That's brilliant.
And it really was.
Did you just
it really
realize that?
helped.
You just realized that, or did you have input to realize that?
When did I think a
That's
couple years.
huge.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago, or a year and a half ago. I consulted with, Teresa, who works with up in Portland.
Yes.
Primor, yeah. So she works with a variety of creative people.
Oh, yeah. She's a
And-
very talented graphic designer and webmaster.
Yeah. And she offers, she will work with you in kind of helping you ask the questions. And I remember right around that time, kind of as I was preparing to meet with her, it's kind of a way to envision where do you want to go? You know, where do you want to put your energy? And so she kind of helped me kind of formulate questions for myself and get to that point. And in preparation for that discussion, I remember thinking, you know, this is great. I am coming back to this in a new way, and it's been there. You know,
Wow.
it's there. And that helps me know I can step away from it, and
Well,
it's
sure.
not turning it off. It's
Right.
not closing
When your-
that door.
When your life needs you, when your
Exactly.
kids need you, or your husband or your
Exactly.
family, whatever needs you, you don't have to feel like you're abandoning.
Right.
You're stepping away. I love that.
Yeah, it's so helpful.
Okay, so before we end the segment, I want to ask a couple of questions. One is, do you have shows around the community typically, or is there a way people
have-
can know? Do you have a website?
I do have a website.
And what is that website?
So it's Erin Marr, that's ErinMarr, photo.com, and it has some galleries of my work.
Okay,
and,
good.
Yeah.
And so if
people
anything's
can see that.
upcoming, you put it.
Yeah, yes, I haven't always updated like where to find me, but
No, I get that.
River Gallery there was a great show in September at This Oregon Life. There
Aren't
was
we
a
so
juried
lucky
show,
to have
and
River Gallery in Independence?
I love it.
We're
yeah, it's-
so lucky to have that
yeah,
place.
and again,
I love it.
inspiring because artists of different media, and you just see, you know, it's and the shows they put together, you know, different themes.
Okay, the next question I want to ask you is, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but because you're a writer,
Yes.
and because you just enlightened me about this idea of architecture affecting everything and every day, have you thought about putting together a book with some writing just on that subject?
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. You know, just like photos take up a lot of room.
Yeah.
I have this coffee table book of Annie Leibovitz.
Yes.
And so it's the details about the picture are very few,
Yeah.
but very inspiring and enlightening.
Neat.
But the photo really speaks for itself. And she'll say,
Right.
oh, this is da-da-da, and you go, okay.
Yeah.
You know, so I just wonder, because I've seen your pictures of doors or wrought iron railing or leaves on the street, and just to say what inspired you to take that picture.
I
you ever
have
thought
thought about pairing, and in different ways, you know, that you could say something specific about the photo that is directly related to it, or something kind of inspired by the photo.
Yeah.
I have thought of that. I've had that, and not in a very specific way, but just that idea of image and words paired.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of power of that word-image interaction.
Especially for people like maybe me or others who are used to reading to be informed.
Right.
To be able to look at a picture and then be informed in another way. It's
Right.
very illuminating.
It brings another dimension. But one thing I love about the visual arts too is that I have what I take from it by creating it and what that gives to me, and then when it's out there, everybody else has their own
Absolutely.
own experience of it, exactly. And I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, and must be a lot of freedom in that. It's like, yep, do what you want with it.
Exactly.
It could make you cry, or it could make you scream, or it could make you happy, whatever it brings, because we really don't have control over what other people bring to our work.
Right.
That's good. That's really good that you get that. I've talked to a lot of writers especially who think, oh, I'm putting it out here, and they really want people to understand. Well, they are going to come at it from a million different views. It's really
Bring
hard
their
to
own
control that.
perspective. It's exactly the same thing. And to me, that's the writing process. You get what you need from it and want from it as you're creating, and then it's let loose, wherever it may go.
Well, that's a really balanced position. I mean, you sound to me like very balanced in the advantage of how you're working your art with your family, but also how you're working your art with the rest of the world.
Oh, well,
So that's really
thanks.
wonderful that you found that, because your kids are dear and important and time consuming.
Right.
So they
And
could
I love
consume
having,
love
time
So having that
with them.
balance is something I think all of us really try to achieve, and it sounds like you have. Congratulations.
Well, great.
Thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
And when that new coffee table book comes out, let me know.
I will.
We'll have an opening. You know, I always love to have a reason for a party.
Oh,
So we'll have an opening at the Carriage House, and make sure everybody sees that.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for being here with me and with Erin, and stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. We are back in the studio with one of my favorite people, Rebecca McCannell. She does so much in this community, and she does it so quietly and so well. I appreciate her so much agreeing to be here today, and you will soon find out why. So thank you very much, Rebecca, for being here. And you are a professor at Western.
Correct.
And I assume that's how you got to Monmouth.
That is how I got to Monmouth. I was in grad school at Northern Illinois University.
Is that where you're from?
Well, Michigan originally.
Okay.
So I
One of
did-
those cold places.
Right, Midwest. And so after grad school, I was looking for a position, and Jim Mattingly had just retired from Western Oregon University, and so I applied for his position, and they called me out and offered me the job. So
Right out of grad
I've been
school?
here right out of grad school. In
Wow.
fact, I had the interview in January and graduated in May, and I was, once I got back and had found out I got offered the job, my professors would joke and say, "There's the one who got a job," because at that point for the
No.
MFA grads, it was pretty hard
Right.
to get a job anywhere. So I caught it just at the right time when there were a lot of retirements
Oh,
at Western,
wow.
and I was really excited.
Were
to
you
get the
hoping to
job.
come to Oregon, or were you
I-
just like, I'm out of grad school, I'll go anywhere?
You know, I applied for 3 or 4 different jobs, and this was the one I wanted the most. I had never been to the Northwest, but had always heard it was gorgeous, and I like cool, temperate climates. I didn't want to go to the South. I didn't want to go to the Southwest. So,
Right.
So I was very happy.
Oh, and that's been since you got out of grad school, and you've been here ever
Right,
since?
20 years, yeah.
And so you didn't have kids when you moved here?
I didn't.
You were
I
just-
wasn't married. I
Did you
came-
find your husband here?
I did at a friend's birthday party. About 2 weeks after I got here.
Oh
so that was good timing. Yeah.
Wow, you have some star over you or something, right? So is he an Oregonian?
He was born in Medford, was raised in Redding, California, and then came to school at OSU in the early 80s. So he's been here most of his adult life too.
And so your kids are total Oregonians.
They are
They've
total
just been
Oregonians,
here.
yeah.
And so when you got your job at Western, what was that job?
I was hired to teach the printmaking program, and
Tell me what printmaking is.
Oh, printmaking is a fine art, and if you think about woodcuts or screen printing or etchings like Rembrandt would do, lithography. So there's several, probably 5 main headings of printmaking, and I am the only teacher that teaches it here, so I teach
Is
a little
that
bit of everything.
right?
My own specialty is more the etching and lithography, but since I've gotten here, I teach it all, and I've done a little bit more
So
myself.
lithography, does that mean it's something that's off the page?
Lithography means stone writing. So traditionally, we would work on a big slab of Bavarian limestone and draw with a waxy crayon, and then you have to etch it with very toxic chemicals,
Oh,
nitric
wow.
acid.
Etch the stone.
Right. So you're not making a physical height change in the stone, but you're creating a chemical process that allows part of the stone to receive the oily ink and part to reject it. So it's kind of mysterious and magical seeming
Wow.
because there's no physical change to the surface. It's still very smooth, but the ink will only attach to certain parts of the plate. So
that you've already put stuff on.
Right.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness,
So it's
kinda like
exciting.
magic ink?
It feels like magic ink. Yeah. And the students are always amazed by it too. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so now, though, 20 years later, what are you doing here at Western?
Well, when I went through grad school, a lot of the processes were still very toxic. So I made a real effort to go to as many workshops as I could to find out about less toxic alternatives. And so a lot of my tenure here at Western has been doing research and finding ways to make it safer because a lot of printmakers would die a very early death
Is that
and suffer
right?
infertility and other things,
Oh,
birth defects
my.
and things because of all these really hazardous
Wow.
things that they're around. So I've attended workshops in Canada and different places to find out ways to substitute materials that are newer and safer. And this summer I was working on a grant in lithography as well, but it was using aluminum plate lithography, and instead of using these really caustic lacquers and solvents, they were using plant-based materials.
Oh, my.
And the lacquers were the same kind of material that they put on aspirin to keep it from irritating your stomach. So
Isn't
it's
that
it's pharmaceutical grade
interesting?
materials
Right?
that are much safer. So I'm really excited to
So
get
you're
back
able
to
to
lithography.
integrate that here.
Right,
Oh,
right.
that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
In some areas, I felt like I had to eliminate techniques that were too hazardous, even though they create really beautiful artwork. So I felt like I was making a compromise between what I really love to do, but also the safety of myself and my students.
No, right.
But now I've found more ways to maintain that image quality without being around all those really toxic
And it
materials.
took all those
so.
years. How wonderful that you
Yeah.
did that. We have many people who watch our show who are, closet artists or, people who do crafts and stuff like that. And so it's always nice to be educated a little bit about what all there is out there.
Right,
It's amazing.
right.
As I do this series on the arts just in our community, I'm just amazed at who we have in our community, Like somebody who's doing research to make this beautiful work less toxic. I mean, that's just one part of what you do, because are you chairing your department now?
This year I've become department head, and I'll be that for about 3 years. So we
Oh.
rotate. That's sort of you kind of volunteer / get elected for it, and it's there's a little bit of release time, so it's not terrible, but it does mean a lot of other administrative kind of jobs
And
that
you're
take
still
you away
teaching.
from teaching. I still teach, so I've got.
So you're administrating the department, you're teaching, and you have kids.
I have 3 children.
Three
yeah.
kids, and they're like teen.
I've got a 16-year-old son, a 13-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old daughter.
So no lack of energy at home. Or projects,
Lots
or
of projects
places to be,
anyway.
right?
Right.
Oh my goodness. And yet you still find time to do your art, because I've seen it.
Well,
That's what
I
intrigued
do
me.
make some art. I don't make as much as I could if I didn't have, all these other commitments. So that is a balancing act that I kind of have to come to terms with in different ways. I think right now, I really want to focus on being a mother, and
Right.
I hate to spend so much time in this print shop that I can't be seeing plays that my kids are in and
Right.
things like that. So I
Yes,
think I have
yes.
to kind of just kind of remind myself that there's different times for different kinds of intensity in my artwork, and hopefully if my health is still good after, the kids are grown,
Yeah.
I can put a lot of energy into the art
Yes,
again and be
yes.
more productive than I am now. But I
Right.
do definitely try to create artwork. Summer tends to be my most intensive period of production.
And what type are you doing? Because you have a few mediums.
I
don't
do.
you? Or-
The ones I tend to like the most are photographic kind of processes. So I draw an image on a transparent film and just hand draw. Usually I don't take photographs or create it on the computer. But then when I get the drawing just how I like it, then I use a photosensitive film on the plate. You can also buy some plates that already come pre-sensitized, so it's easy to burn it onto the plate with the ultraviolet light.
When you say
And,
plate, are you meaning glass?
Well, there's different surfaces. Some of the plates are steel with a emulsion on there that's like it looks almost like a thin layer of colored plastic that is light sensitive.
I see.
Another method, I take a copper plate and then I adhere a roll of very thin blue film that they used in it originally was developed for electronic circuit
My
industry,
goodness.
so it was called Riston in the computer industry, and then artists discovered it and decided this could
Wow.
work for printmaking too, so it was borrowed by printmakers. And so I tend to use those methods the most, and this new process of lithography also involves an option of painting a liquid on that's light sensitive that you can burn a transparency
Wow.
onto as well. So that tends to be the work that I've been doing the most lately.
And so if and when you show your work, is that what we'll see
Right,
typically?
yeah. I tend to, occasionally I'll have drawings that I put into shows too, but I tend to focus mostly on the printmaking. And, right, so I've got some work at the River Gallery
Yep.
in Independence, and I'm a member of Print Arts Northwest, which is I guess 8 different states from the Northwest region, including Alaska and Hawaii and Montana, and so they have a small gallery presence up in the Multnomah Arts Center, I guess it's called.
Yes.
We just recently moved there in this
Oh,
past year. We've kind
nice.
of bounced around. At one point we had
So
a
you
space
have-
in the Pearl, you know,
Yeah. So you have some
Pacific.
things there on
some work
display.
there, and I tend to also send work out to juried shows. So sometimes I'll just send one piece to a show
Oh,
in Indiana
fun.
or someplace.
That's
that
nice.
is a juried
So
show.
how did you know that you wanted to be an artist, or is that?
Oh, I always would draw. I would, yeah, I always loved to draw. So I would help my teachers make bulletin boards in elementary school, and I'd enter every poster contest that came up. You know,
Really?
they used to have the cereal box contest where you
Yes.
had to draw
Yep.
a Kellogg's character
Yep.
or something, and I won a bicycle on one
You
of those.
did?
You know, so it was fun. So I always was encouraged in my art, and I'd get little awards here and there, and so. I knew I wanted to go into art. I thought I'd be an illustrator originally, and I started a program in undergrad for illustration, and then I realized that I really preferred the fine art aspects of it. And my teachers encouraged me to consider teaching, so they said, "Oh, go to grad school and try for a teaching assistantship.
Yeah.
You seem really enthusiastic about the
Right.
materials and would be good at teaching it to others." So that is where I got the idea of possibly pursuing education.
And
at a
besides
college
all
level.
of the administrative meetings and all that of academia, do you enjoy teaching it, or
I really like teaching,
Yeah.
and I think in some ways the students at Western, since so many of them are recruited out of our liberal arts classes, they don't come in thinking they're going to be an art major.
Interesting.
So we recognize talent early on in those drawing classes or beginning 2D design classes, and suggest maybe they should take some more art and see if they get excited about it. So we end up recruiting some of our best students out of other majors.
Okay, so that
And,
must be really exciting to
it
see someone's
is,
life
yeah.
change.
Well,
I mean,
and-
that's the dream of a
Right.
college professor, right?
Right, and I think the other
You have an impact.
Right. The other thing that's real satisfying is that since so many of these students are new to art, you see so much improvement, even in the course of a 10-week term. Like in a beginning drawing class, these students who are really afraid to draw or feel like
Yes.
they've never been a good
Yes.
at art, and they just get a little instruction and some feedback, and they get so excited about how much
Oh
they're
my
improving,
goodness.
and just from the front of their portfolio to the back, it's really exciting to see.
That has to be
much
so
improvement.
gratifying for you.
It really is, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize you stole people.
We do. That's our secret.
Yeah,
in the
right.
art
Okay,
department, yeah.
not anymore. Sorry. But that's great. Now, are your kids interested, or are they artists at all?
They're
or-
all very artsy, craftsy. Connor, the oldest one, he loves to cartoon and caricature. He asked me to. He and his buddy asked me if I could teach them some caricature, and I used to be a caricature artist
Did
in
you?
grad school to put myself through grad school.
Wow.
At Six Flags Park
Yeah?
out in around
My
Chicago.
goodness. You see, that's why I love doing
these
the
little
show. All
secret
these people,
skills.
I think, oh, she's so talented, and I don't even, the depth of the talent is amazing. Wow.
So he's kind of cartooning, and Delaney loves to draw. She's kind of getting into the Japanese
Anime?
anime manga kind of cartoonier, Nickelodeon kind of style
Yeah,
characters. So she does
wow.
these real charming drawings. And Gwenny is just always, she's a little one. She's
Yeah.
a third grader.
Yeah.
And she's always building things and tying things and, just very
Creating.
active physically too.
Oh,
so I think they all
wow.
enjoy it to different degrees.
That is so exciting. That must be for you, to see your kids kind
I'm
of.
glad they all still like
And did
art
anybody in your family have this gift? Because apparently you had it
Oh.
very young, right?
Yeah, well, my mother had gone through a couple majors. One of them was art, and she was always very artsy and creative, and she'd paint the side of our van.
Oh,
kind of on the
wow.
spur of the moment.
Yeah?
So she was
Sounds like
very
me.
fun. She was whereas my dad was very analytical and more of an engineering kind of personality. So I think I got some of the technical attention that you need to be a printmaker from him, and some of the more creative aspects from my mom. So I think it was a nice merging of
Right.
different kinds of
Yes.
attention to. Yeah,
And it
different
must
aspects.
feel really good to have taken what is organically you and created this life out of it.
I feel really fortunate. I
Yeah.
love teaching. I love making art. And I think what is most freeing in my position is that I don't have to try to support myself on my art, which I know is a difficult thing for
Right.
anyone to do. But I feel like I can create any kind of image I want because I don't have to depend on selling it to someone. So
Right,
if someone
right.
likes it, that's great. but I don't have to feel like I have to pander to the
No,
clients
right.
at a gallery
Right.
in order to
But
give
you
the
will
kind
sell
of imagery
it. Do you sell your art,
Not
or is
a
that
lot.
hard? It's like, is it hard
Sometimes
to like?
I do.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the wonderful thing about printmaking is that each image is original, but it can also be repeated. So once I make that copper plate, I can print
I
10 or
see.
20 that look exactly
Right.
alike. So each one is an original etching,
Right.
but it's not my only one. Whereas a painter or someone who's done a pencil drawing, it's sometimes
gone.
harder to give away
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that art.
And are you involved with children's theater here?
I am. I helped as a prop master 2 years ago. There's a really great group called, now it's called Applebox Children's Theater. A year ago it was called Mid-Valley
Yes.
Community Children's Theater. I'm not sure if I get it all in the
Yes.
right order there, but Rob Harriman and Barb Harriman,
I know
who
they're
were,
like miracle workers.
they are
right?
miracle workers. They're amazing.
I see the plays they do every summer with these
They're really ambitious. but-
unruly mob of kids, and I'm going, how did this happen,
Yeah, it's
right?
a huge group of children that's been
Yeah.
growing every year. I think this is their, boy, we're going on our 4th, maybe. I wasn't involved the first year, but we've done at least 3 with them, with my children in there, and I've helped with some costumes and props and things
So
like
the
that.
prop master mean you're in charge of getting people changed?
Yeah, that year,
or
well, the props really are more of the physical,
the
you know,
accoutrements or
right,
whatever?
it might be a helmet or
Yeah.
it might be shields
Yeah.
for, you know, the knights or shoes and things. It's
And
not
you're
so much the
making them?
costumes. Sometimes,
You
right?
make 'em.
Sometimes it's a monster.
Yeah.
My colleague Mary Hardin did
Did
a
the,
Scylla, which
yeah,
is amazing.
right?
The 6-headed
I know,
creature that.
I know.
So we rope everybody in that we can to help with that because it's a huge project,
Yeah.
and all of the parents are. I mean, 4 or 5 of the parents are busy sewing costumes.
That's what I
Some of
hear.
us are, you know, working on painting backdrops and
They're
things. So it
fabulous
really is.
productions. Is
it's
all that
really
stuff
fun.
saved
We
somewhere?
save a lot of it.
Okay.
Some of the costumes are borrowed from different theater groups around the area, and we're trying to find storage areas. So if anyone
Yeah.
in the listening audience wants to store
Provide some
flats
storage.
or
I
anything
know,
like
because-
that, we can certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, so if you have storage that you'd like to lend, how can they get in touch with you?
You know, you could email me at Western. You could, yeah, that's probably
What's your
the
email
easiest
address?
things. So McCann R, MCCANNR @woo.edu.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll
or
put that
find me
up.
on the directory.
Yeah,
there. But,
good, good.
yeah, we
Because I
can-
look at that stuff and I think, surely, because you only do it twice, right, or once?
Right, there's 2. Right, we practice all summer long. It's about
Yes.
6 weeks of nightly rehearsals,
know.
and then we've done. Usually it's well, for the past few years we've done 2 shows on a Saturday, so a matinee and then an evening show. Last year we tried a Thursday night dress rehearsal that was open to the public,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then a Friday night show and a Saturday night show. So we
Oh,
didn't do
good,
the,
you got a little more in.
right, and so it gives people more chances to see it instead of only that
Right.
one Saturday
Because
during the
boy,
summer.
it is such a production. I just hate to
It
see it.
is,
Okay,
yeah.
now we've done it and everything's
Yeah.
going away. Oh, all that work. Thank you
Right.
for doing that. Thank you for doing so much here in this community, and you're so quiet about it, making it all happen. And because you're also on the Art and Culture Commission in the City of Monmouth.
I am. Yep.
Yeah, that too.
Mm-hmm.
And at the Riverview Gallery, and teaching, and administrating, and researching. Oh, and you have these kids. So thank you. It's been a
crazy.
pleasure
Thank
to have
you.
you here on the show. Thanks for sharing about what you do and why you do it.
You're welcome.
We'll be right back with our next and final guest. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Polk Salad, where we're having a bounty of conversation about the visual arts today. We have our final guest here in the studio, Tamara Angeny, who is a painter and a very wonderful painter, and moved here to Oregon just so she could do that, paint. So tell us about that.
I moved here in 2006, and my husband and I were living in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were both painting full-time. Originally, I was started in the art business working for Atelier, a company called Phoenix Art Group.
What's an atelier? Tell us.
Well, it's a gallery. Ours was a gallery, and then also did framing. But they have artists that work on the same location.
Oh,
so they had yes, they had separate studios, and then they also had they had the main artists, and then they would also have assistants to help them.
Okay, wow.
And a lot of artists have done that. Monet
Phoenix.
did that. A lot of
Really?
old classic artists have done that. Yes, because you need help. At some point.
Doing what?
Well, with some of the painting.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize
Right,
that.
and for, for large pieces, sometimes I'll get some help. And, Monet painted for a long time, got a little older and needed a little bit of help from
Really?
assistants.
Really?
Well, or even prep work and that kind of thing.
Right, where it's not the actual putting the paint on the canvas.
Exactly.
So that's the one thing I think where you're different from our other guests is that you've had a lot of experience in the actual art industry, if you will, the business of art, which I find really fascinating because art just doesn't show up. Somebody
No.
gets it to your house,
That's
to your
right.
room. So what were you
That's
doing in
right.
Phoenix?
Well,
in
initially
that
I was
vein?
working for that gallery as a salesperson.
So it must have been pretty big.
It was. There were 100 employees there, and they sell, worldwide.
And so you were selling the art that was being produced there?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was also a gallery there, and we did the framing there. So the whole package deal.
Right. So who did you sell this art? Did people just walk in and buy the art?
We had a retail gallery, but then we also sold wholesale, so we would sell to interior designers, a lot to interior designers.
Really?
And with the housing market and all the growth in Phoenix, it was growing quickly. at the time.
Wow. So that was like the time to be there.
It was.
So
And it
you
was a
got
lot
all
of
these
fun.
big stucco houses going up out in the
Right.
desert with these big walls.
Yes, and they would come into the gallery, or I would meet with the interior designer. I would take the art out to the home and see what they liked.
That
And then
must
we
have
would
been
usually custom
interesting.
frame it for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's an interesting aspect. So tell me, back up a little bit and tell me how it is that you got started painting.
Well, I drew and
When you were little?
did crafting and since I was a kid. And so
You
I always
always
wanted
drew.
to be an artist. Yes, I
Always wanted to be an artist? Was
Yep.
anybody in your family an artist?
Well, my mother did crafting, and so did my sisters. Actually, a couple of my sisters are pretty good artists, but they just never pursued it.
Right. They can do it. They
Yes.
just didn't pursue it as a profession.
Yes, and so
But
I was
you-
inspired by that.
You were?
And then when I went to college, I had an art major. And then eventually, that was in Missouri, where I was raised. And then when I moved to Texas, I went to school there, and then eventually got to Arizona and tried to get more into a creative field.
I
And that's
see.
why I started selling art.
So when you were in school, you were majoring in art.
Yes.
And so then when you finished with that, you actually were able to work in your field.
Yes, eventually.
So were you painting when you were at this gallery, or were you just
No.
working the
well,
retail?
I dabbled a little bit because it was really inspiring. All the studios were right there, and all the artists were around. It was really great to be around all the artists.
Yeah.
So they would, I'd go in after work and dabble a little
You
bit. But I
did?
really wasn't painting very much. It was only, I was working a lot too.
Right.
So it was really only after I left that gallery that I started to paint full time.
And you sort of do mostly landscapes? You lean to outdoor?
I have been doing primarily landscapes and acrylic paints, or I also do some mixed medium collage.
Oh, right. And but your
And
landscapes
some
are,
abstracts.
your
but-
landscapes are beautiful.
Thank you.
Capturing nature. You seem to be able to capture what you're seeing,
Well, it's
in your
great
mind's eye.
practice to try to go out and paint on site
Oh.
to do that.
You have to be pretty quick, though, right? Because things change.
It changes so fast. That's the big challenge. It is. You get out there and see, it's all about the lighting. So you
Right.
get out there, the lighting's perfect. You have to kind of get down what you're going to do and then stick with it. Even though the lighting changes, you have to try to stay with your original idea that you
Right,
had.
right. So what brought you to Oregon? If you were in Arizona in this successful art business.
Well, I wasn't painting as much landscape art at the time. It's all desert.
Yeah.
And that was okay to paint the desert. The desert is beautiful,
Well, I'm
but
sure the light makes a big difference,
it does.
especially,
It does. But I didn't always want to paint just the desert landscape.
Right, right.
And at the time, it was a good time for us to make a change if we wanted to. So we sold our house and decided we wanted to move to the Northwest. My parents had lived in Portland for about 5 years, so I'd come up to visit and loved it. I
Yeah,
really
because it was
knew
hot
so
in Phoenix,
beautiful.
right?
Yes, it was so hot, and it's grown so much.
Oh, right.
It's really, my husband's a native of Arizona, and he's seen it change a lot. And I lived there for 12 years and saw it just spread out all over the place.
Wow. So you
So I was
came,
ready to get out of the heat, get out of the crowded city, and so
and
we
you
decided
moved to
come up here.
Independence, right?
Yes.
How'd you find Independence, Oregon out of,
Well, by accident.
Yeah?
We came up at first, in December because we wanted to see what it was like in the rain and if we could handle it. And so we looked around. We started at Roseburg, and then we kind of went up the I-5 corridor looking, and we ultimately found a house we liked in Independence.
Isn't that something? I love that. I
And
love how people come to this community.
Right, and we thought, it's to us where I was already commuting 30 minutes, each way to work. When we got here, it's an hour to the mountains, an hour to the coast, hour to Eugene, hour to Portland. It seemed like, there was kind of a central location here, but it was still nice and rural, and we liked that.
Yeah, it's a great community. I love this
It is.
community.
It is.
And so, are you painting now?
I am painting a little bit, but less so. I'm kind of taking a little break.
But you do commissions, don't you?
I do. I'm still doing commissions, yes.
You do
And I still do some
portraits or
classes.
landscape.
But I just do one-on-one classes. I don't do group
You teach
classes.
people
Yes.
one-on-one. That's wonderful.
If they'd like. And then we can teach it, in the studio or go out and plein air paint and just, like I was saying, just
Really?
paint outside.
Do you have a website where if somebody wanted to?
Yes, I
classes?
do. It's AngenieKeimArt.com.
And how do you spell Angeney?
ANGENEY.
Okay, Kime Art.
Yes.
Kime, all one word, art.com.
Correct. Yes.
Good, and they can contact you that way.
Yes.
And so, because I've heard you said that you paint sometimes people's houses, like if it's their home or they're
Yes.
going to.
I did that for a local customer in Monmouth.
I think that's a wonderful gift to give someone.
It was a
someone who's
surprise for his wife's birthday.
Was that what it was? Where they've been living there for a long time and they raised their kids there or whatever?
Well, it was
I
an
mean,
Edwards edition, so I think they'd lived there at least 5 years. But they had their children there,
Yeah.
and they made a point of having me paint their cat into it. They wanted to make sure the cat was in
Can
there.
you do that?
Well, sure.
Isn't that great? You can get a portrait of the house, whether it's your new dream house or your old family home and your
Right.
animal. And you
And
do
I kind
animal
of,
portraits
and
too,
since
don't you?
they hadn't been there that long, I kind of developed the landscape a little bit, so made the
Yes.
trees bigger and
Oh,
stuff like
like
that.
it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well,
Wow, magic. And so but I've seen you do portraits of animals too, right?
Yes,
Like
of-
if somebody wants their dog painted or.
I like to paint dogs. I painted a few horses.
That's a
but
wonderful gift to
I
give to
painted
someone.
dogs mostly.
Picture of their dog or their pet.
And I
must-
love animals. I love that.
That must be pretty gratifying for you, though, because I would imagine that makes people really happy
Yes.
to see their picture.
Well, and
of
it's nice to kind of get to meet the dog so
Yeah.
that you kind of know their personality and
Yeah.
then paint them from there. But I paint from a photograph. I can't
Right.
paint from a
You don't have the
moving
dog sit for you.
No.
That'd be a little hard to,
stay.
right. Just a little to the left. Yeah, that'd be a little difficult, right?
Right.
So what do you enjoy painting the most? If you could just do whatever you want in the studio.
Kind of depends on how you're feeling at the time, But I do still like painting the landscapes. But last year I painted a portrait, a figurative portrait of a person, and that was really fun.
Was
I
it?
wouldn't-
'Cause you don't do that
That might
much.
be that. Well, and that's another challenge.
Right.
So I like that
Yeah,
idea.
because your paintings are beautiful.
Thank you.
They're so beautiful. And your colors are original. I mean, the mixes that you do,
I like color.
they seem
I do
to,
like color.
I guess, be perfect for the painting, which is the point. I mean, obviously, I don't know much about art or anything like that, but I have seen you
Well, you know what you like.
Yeah, that's true. We know what we like. So if you still do commissions and you're involved in the valley in other ways too, right? Don't you paint up at the winery sometimes?
I do wine tasting up there, and then I would come in early or when we had a little time, when there was a little lull.
And where is
and
that?
paint.
That's here in Polk County.
It's
but
it's actually considered Salem, but it's off Oak Grove Road, off 22. It's Legacy Estates Vineyard.
Legacy Estates.
It's part
I've
of
been
Yellow
up there
Hills, is
before.
what it is.
Oh, But it's beautiful. I
It is
could
beautiful.
see why
It's
you'd
a
want to
beautiful
paint
vineyard.
up there.
It's 200 acres, and it's beautiful views. And it goes up about 450 feet, so you get a great view of the valley.
But it doesn't feel like a climb, It just feels like
No.
you're easing up, and all of a
Yes.
sudden you turn around and you're in this gorgeous place. How
Especially
lucky.
now, because all the vines have changed, so it's all golden.
Oh
It's
my
beautiful.
goodness. How lucky, though, that you as a painter with that kind of eye get to be up in the midst of all that, right?
It is. It's nice.
Of course, I'm sure I would guess that you're just generally observant, So wherever you are, you can find something that
And a lot of it's lighting. Certain times that, well, you know, you get up in the morning and there's just the beautiful light from the morning light.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, they cast shadows and the golden light in the evening. So I think that's a lot of it that, you know, really kind of focuses on something and you really notice the beauty of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Do you sell your stuff, your paintings, or the ones
I
you do in
do.
general? Is that hard for you as a painter?
Well, that's more. It's easier to sell. It's easier to sell other people's paintings than your own.
That's what I'm wondering.
It is.
You put all this time and effort, and you capture the light and the beauty, and then even though somebody's giving you money for it, it must be hard to. Do you take
Right,
pictures
you
of
don't-
them, or you
I
just
do. I
let?
photograph them, and we put them on the website. And there's the rock salt imports in Independence. They sell some of the art.
Oh, some of your art. Oh, good.
Yes, mine and my husband's.
Oh, good. Rock Salt Imports, so they can find it there.
Yep.
But if they contact you, you can let them know.
Oh, sure.
So they can contact you for classes or commissions, paint their house, paint their animal. That's exciting. Thank you for
Thank
coming here
you.
today and sharing all this with us. There's
pleasure.
just a wealth of information out there. Thank you very much for being with us today on Polk Salad. Hope you've learned, and stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for our show here at Polk Salad, where we had a bounty of wonderful conversation with our three guests, all of whom were so delightful, so different, so smart. I mean, I learned a lot today, and I'm sure you did too. So thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned. We have some more shows coming up here in the next months, and in the future we'll be talking more about the arts and literacy here in our community. Thanks so much for supporting us. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, I will see you around town. Thank you.